As many of you know, I was raised a Roman Catholic. As you also know, I left the church when I came of age and was moved by the Lord to warn the people of what both prophecy and history says about the man of sin in Rome. But before leaving the church, I noticed something that later on in life struck me as a bit strange. At first, when I was Catholic, I didn't think anything of it, but later on, it appeared very strange. As a child, and like most young Catholics at the age of 10, I was confirmed, as they called it, and when that happened, my parents gave me my very own Catholic missal. The word missal is actually a Latin term meaning mass book. Most Catholics don't purchase their own missals because every month the priests will put a new missal, or missalette, if you will, in the pews, free of charge for the churchgoers so that they can follow along with the Mass. There was also a book called the Lectionary if you wanted to know what the sermon was to be about each week for years in advance. These books were designed purposely to control what every Roman Catholic heard when they went to church each week. By having a Vatican-approved message for each attending Catholic every week they attended the Mass all around the world, allowed for absolute control over 1.2 billion people. These booklets have every prayer, hymn, and chant for the people to recite after every scripted statement made by the priest in the Mass. Now, coming from a devout family like I did, my family was able to recite the prayers and chants from memory because they never changed. Those books even told us when to stand and sit or even kneel at certain times during the Mass. And we also memorized this out of just sheer repetition. And if you had a lectionary in hand, you also knew exactly what the priest was going to read from the Bible each week as well. And yes, it was rather boring because it never changed. Centuries ago, the Vatican knew by using a Mass book, they could easily control the people by demanding every priest in every church around the world say the exact same things each and every day the people would gather for a Mass. These books were scripted years in advance because back then they had to be able to send those booklets to all the churches before the Mass was held. They didn't have a lot of shipping abilities or shipping companies back then. But think about it. They didn't even have TV or internet back then either, and so the only way that they knew how to control the people and what the people were going to learn was by what they were taught by their trusted priests whenever they gathered in the church. And so Rome demanded every church service to be an identical service all around the world, no matter what church you went into or whatever nation you stood in. I mean, in fact, you could even do this today. If you went to a Catholic Mass, say you found a church that had two Masses on the same day, let's say. If you found a Catholic church that had a Mass in the morning and a Mass in the afternoon, and you went to both, you would find that the prayers, the hymns, the chants, and even the scripture reading would all be the exact same words for both services. So, why did I share all that? And what does any of that have to do with the Vatican controlling the U.S. media? Well, since we have printed proof both on and offline that the Catholic Church does in fact control their people by using global indoctrination methods at every Mass to assure they keep them in deception and under their control, is there any evidence in today's media that all the news reports are scripted in the exact same manner as the Roman Catholic Church services are scripted each and every week, so as to keep the people that are watching the TVs just as controlled as the people sitting in the pews? Check out this video.
Who are you really shopping for this holiday season? It's okay, you can admit it, if you've bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
Well, it's okay, you can admit it if you have bought an item or 2 or maybe 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it. You've bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you've bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it, Todd. If you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or maybe 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought 1 or 2 or maybe 3 or 4, maybe even 10 items for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or maybe 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought maybe an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
Is it okay? You can admit it If you bought an item or 2 or 3 or 10 for yourself, it's okay. You can admit it.
Okay, I kind of guess you get my point here. The only thing I don't like about this string of videos is somebody put a laugh track in it. But it is comical if you think about it, but at the same time, it's pretty sad. And it's pretty obvious that the U.S. media is using the exact same indoctrination methods that the Roman Catholic Church uses. Thank you for watching. God bless.